Hey guys, welcome back to another Swords and Magic devlog. It's been a while since the last one. The holidays are pretty crazy for us as my wife works retail. My daughter's in school for the first year, so we're just getting used to her having friends and attending social events. And I'm just getting over a cold, which sort of sabotaged last weekend's streams. So I'm really hoping to get back to weekly devlogs starting after the new year. Anyway, first of all, Devlog episode 0 just hit 100,000 views, and it's just crazy to me. Thank you so much for sticking with me, subscribing to the channel, liking the videos, and especially for wishlisting the game on Steam. Steam wishlists are a great way for me to understand how interested players are in my project. Currently we've got about 3,000 wishlists, and that's awesome, that's amazing. But we're just about to hit 15,000 subscribers, which means many of you guys are interested in the devlogs, but not so much the game. That's sort of puzzling to me, but I guess I understand. But if you actually are interested in buying the game when it comes out, please do me a favor and wishlist it when you get the chance. I'll put the link in the description below. So what's been going on the last few weeks? A whole lot, and practically nothing at the same time. Moz has been working hard on refactoring and cleaning up the project, so we have a very solid foundation to build off of when we start world building, which should be very soon. I've been working on modeling monsters and animals for the game, including dragons. Well, technically wyverns, but we're going to try to use the terms interchangeably in Swords and Magic, unless actual dragons do end up in the game later on. I've also been working hard on the world's lore, to be more precise, the history of Tirwin and how the state of the world came to be. Now there's a whole lot of really awesome stuff that goes on between the lines here, but I don't want to spoil anything yet, because you're probably going to want to learn about it through the storylines in-game. But I really do want to give everyone a rough idea of the world, so this devlog's mostly just going to be one big story time, while you watch me model the wyvern. I do want to preface this though, the way we're approaching most of the monsters in the game is kind of unique. Since I don't like animating, and it takes forever and I don't think I'm skilled enough to really pull it off, we're using animations purchased from the Unreal Marketplace. Most of the animations we're using come with meshes attached, unfortunately. None of those models will ever actually match the game's art style, so this is my workflow. I open the monster in Maya and separate the mesh from the rig. Then I begin modeling my own character using the old mesh as a guide, as well as reference from the web or an art book. I model it to the old rig. Then, when it's finished, I bind the new mesh to the old rig and begin weight painting, UVing, and then texturing. Finally, I drop the new rig with the mesh into Unreal, and we have a new character that matches the Swords and Magic style, but with a full set of animations. It's really a pretty quick workflow, and the dragon has been the toughest character so far, probably for good reason. It's huge. So I know it feels like I'm simply just tracing the old model, and in many ways I kind of am, but I'm legally allowed to use these characters in this way as per Epic license agreement. And it saves me a ton of time and energy, so really in the end, I don't mind taking the shortcuts like this if it gets the results I want. Anyway, hope you enjoy the story. Long before dates were kept, 3 tribes existed. One, a large brutish race, with green skin called the Orcs. Another with hair like the moon and pointed ears, eventually known as Moon Elves. And finally a tribe of what we now know as humans. These 3 tribes lived in different corners of a large continent and rarely came to meet. The Moon Elves, the most intelligent of the 3, were nomads early on, and eventually came to discover a land they would call their home. Deemed the Shardlands, their new territory was covered with enormous crystal formations. These crystals glowed a deep violet and seemed to radiate energy. The Moon Elves were infatuated with the crystals and built walls around their new home to guard it from the other tribes. Eventually, they learned that the crystal shards could have their energy drawn from their husks and inscribed to mundane objects through certain rituals in order to give them extraordinary powers. They called this magic. The Moon Elves believed that the Earth was alive, and presented them with the crystal shards as a gift for their high respect of its flora and fauna. They began using the shards to inscribe many objects, including parchment. They would fill books with these intricate writings and call them spells. Soon, they had grown their small settlement into a gleaming city with the help of the magic. They erected 3 enormous shrines to house the largest monumental crystal shards where they studied and meditated. But with their newfound magic came unwanted attention. The humans and orcs ceased their fighting over land and resources to investigate how the elves had grown such a vast civilization. The elves, being kind-natured, chose to share the knowledge of the shards with the new onlookers. They gifted them simple light and tracking spells to aid them in hunting and established a trade route, where they received food and building resources for some of the shards in attempts to create a peaceful society and help their new allies grow their settlements into cities of their own. But only a year later, when the humans learned how to inscribe their own spells, the regular trades couldn't satisfy their thirst for knowledge. The elves refused to give them additional shards in an attempt to keep them from abusing the magic. One human mage named Tiramar took the role of leader with his impressive spell scribing. His thirst for more was too much, and he sent parties of thieves and excavators into the Shardlands to steal more crystals under the cover of night. Eventually, one of the parties was found out, and the Moon Elves felt betrayed and hurt. They shut their gates and ceased all trade with the other races. They knew the humans would exploit the Shard's magic, and they had to stop it. But it wasn't long until the humans and orcs joined forces. While the orcs weren't as gifted in scribing spells, they understood the power of the spells, and were more than willing to go to war for control over the Shardlands, when Tiramar promised them land, riches, and power in return. Soon, the new allies had formed armies and marched on the Shardlands. They gave the elves no chance to surrender before the battle began. The elves, with immense magical resources, had no problem holding back the attackers for the first few sieges. But soon, the humans learned to write more powerful spells, harnessing the power of a new magic domain called Chaos. They bolstered their armies with spellcasters and warriors with enchanted weapons and armor. The orcs used the magic to enhance their already superb natural fighting abilities, and their warriors led the charge on the elves' gates. The elves had never seen such raw power in magic before. They never had need for such harmful spells, so only a few had ever been written. Unable to defend against this new magic from atop their walls, the elves' armies were forced onto the battlefield to hold back the attackers. Many mages fell to the chaos magic, but they were able to hold off the attack just long enough for a plan to be constructed. The Moon Elves sacrificed one of their 3 shrines in order to cast a major summon spell. The surrounding forest began to shudder as thousands of trees sprung to life, transforming into what were called Dryad. Born with the knowledge of the Moon Elves and the will to protect them with their lives, they engulfed the humans and orcs and turned the tides of battle. But the Dryad were no match for the chaos magic. Their numbers were shrinking fast, and the fallen orcs and humans were quickly returning to life as the human mages reanimated them for a second chance at victory. Back inside the walls of the Shardlands, the Moon Elves prepared to sacrifice a second crystal to summon more Dryad. But before the spell was cast, a young elf named Helena interrupted the High Mages. She insisted that they stop destroying the Earth's gift for the sake of protecting it. She had a better way. The young girl began writing strange runes onto a large scroll. The runes emanated with power as each one formed on the page. She had discovered a runic language that better utilized the magic in the shards, a language from a lost time that only few mages would ever truly master. Helena wrote a spell to teleport the entire Shardlands to an alternate dimension, one impossibly far away from the invading armies. As the High Mages began to cast, the entire Earth began to shake. The elven armies retreated inside the walls, and the attackers fell to their knees as they witnessed the entire city disappear in front of them, leaving a massive crater in the earth. The remaining Dryad fled to the surrounding forests as the humans and orcs wandered into the exposed earth where the Shardlands once stood. While the majority of the Shardlands were now safe from the magic-hungry humans and orcs, the remnants of the Shardlands supplied them with enough scraps to last them for years. Tiramar assumed the role of king and high mage over the humans. And now that the orcs were on their side, together they claimed the rest of the continent for themselves, naming it Tirowin after their mighty ruler. Tiramar ordered that all shards be gathered for safekeeping in the High Mage's towers, which were spread throughout the land. Many of the shards were used, sparingly, to better the lives of the humans and orcs. A mine was constructed to search for additional shards, but not many were found. Tiramar was convinced that the original shard crystals came from the sky, not the earth. Nearly 500 years passed, and many kings from the Tiramar line took the throne, each becoming increasingly more corrupt as they aged. Tirowin was being overrun by monsters and ruffians. Many of its inhabitants took to the sea to settle smaller islands to avoid the king's corrupt ways. Many adventurers were forged in these times. Many armies were raised and fought many battles before falling. The era was named Reign of the Twisted Kings. because of the dark state of Tyrowin. But all was not lost, as a new king was born. Named Owen, the young king took the throne on his 10th birthday after his father had passed. Owen had a kind heart and no signs of the corruption. The people of Tyrowin held their breath, hopeful that his reign would finally bring peace and prosperity to the land. And it did. By the time Owen was 15, he brought together 12 legendary paladins, heroes of great deeds and triumphs. They were stationed around the world to hunt monsters and help the citizens with their woes. Eventually, the land was at peace, and the people loved King Owen. As he aged, he began to feel the tug of the corruption, but was able to control it. Believing that the corruption was a curse on his family's line, he vowed to never bear children, to end the curse with him. But in his younger years, he seemingly adopted a young moon elf child named Erina, who had lost her family in a village raid. Owen raised the girl as his own. As Owen grew old and the kingdom flourished, the adventurers, town guards, and warriors in the land laid down their weapons and retired. Many of them settled down in cities or established family farms. The world seemed to be at peace once and for all. But one day, the kingdom awoke to the news that Owen had disappeared from his castle. One by one, the paladins left their posts to seek out their missing king. Erina also left the castle in search of her adoptive father. Soon, all the paladins were gone. With no one to defend the lands from monsters and men, evil began to drift once again into Tyrowin. 4 years have gone by since Owen's disappearance, and no king has taken his place. The king's advisor has done his best to keep order among the kingdom, but in his search for Erina, Owen, and the paladins, he has had no luck. Town guards are reinstated, and adventurers have been donning their armor once again, but with so many years of peace and many of the land's best fighters too old to train new recruits, the citizens fear they won't be able to defend themselves from the encroaching threats. Today, a young adventurer sails from a neighboring island in search of a new life in the exciting and dangerous world of Tyrowin. Who will this new adventurer be, and what will they discover in these fantastic lands? Only time will tell.